President Carter has been an international influence, but some of his greatest influence, he and Mrs. Carter's, has been right here in Plains, Georgia.
You leading worship for President Jimmy Carter and his wife.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, for, the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and Rosalind Carter, of course, the former First Lady. That's a project I've been working on, a documentary that he's a hero of mine, she's a hero of mine, the way they've lived their lives and the way they have implemented their Christian faith in their lives. In fact, I was able to interview him as well. You know this from having conversations with so many people. When they have lived that much life and then such an interesting or unique life in that they've lived a very international life and seen a lot of different things and experienced a lot of different things, it kind of makes you pause, right? With their answers carry a little more weight to them in a really good way. And so the last question I asked him, I said, you have lived all this life, had all these experiences. If you could leave the world with just one tidbit, what would that be? And he said that they would follow the way of Jesus. And I think, it's the process of believing, the journey of belief is not easy. It's not straightforward. It's not black and white. It doesn't just come to you. It's a process. And so I think there's a lot of affirmingness, a lot of affirmation, a lot of comfort in hearing someone who has been a part of so many different lives and lifestyles and faith backgrounds and people groups still come back to, I really do think this is the best way to live. Not even the best way to look forward. Not because I'm going to be in communion with God forever, but because I can be in communion with God now. This is the best way to be in communion with God now. This is the best way to know God, but also to see others.
There's some rich history in South Georgia, and there's some remnant of the past that is still haunting people.
At one point, they have a wonderful African-American pastor who's also had a lot of world experience, so he brings a lot to the table, and fairly young. He's so dynamic, become a good friend, and he prays throughout the service, different prayers pointed in different ways. And he asked if I would sing a song I had written. Actually, originally, at the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote it for my own church, just as a way to sing over them. It's a prayer. And so as I began to sing it, I saw President Carter take his hand. And he's feeble now. He really is coming to the end of his life, and wrap his arm around his wife of 75 years. And they just bowed their heads and began to pray. And I don't know, there's just something so sweet about observing people's posture of humility in their spirituality. That it's not all I get up there and tell people what to do, but it's laying it down again and again and again with these kind of open palms.
Now, Mr. Jimmy talks a lot about how he grew up out in the country and the only neighbors he had were black people or African Americans. Well, I was the same way, but they were like my family, and I have a lot of black friends, and we'll say that we're sisters, but we have different mothers. So that pretty well makes the tourists go, okay.
Yeah. You mentioned the documentary. I know you interviewed the former president and Andrew Young as well.
Yeah.
What have you learned in this journey of a documentary on race and unity in our country?
Well, that there will always be something to learn. And so I think something I learned from Ambassador Andrew Young specifically is that civil rights never ends. Because of the brokenness of the world, control, manipulation, abuse, oppression, that will always find its way in somewhere. But what's been interesting, you can't eliminate. You cannot eliminate faith, and more specifically, Christianity, from the plight for freedom for anyone who is oppressed. God is speaking freedom at all times.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over. But we cannot underestimate the challenge of hundreds of minor decisions yet to be made.